What's up, guys? Wayne Gerard here. Welcome back. We have got Dan here, the Atalanta insider from Las Vegas, Atalanta. Dan, how are you doing today?
Good, Wayne. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah,
Looking forward to talking Atalanta.
absolutely. I can't believe that you were able to join me today. I was really happy. I reached out to Dan early in the morning, and I was like, bro, would you, by any chance, be willing to come on? And here we go.
Yep,
And
glad it worked out.
yeah, and this is cool because oftentimes we get you have a Milan fan, a Juve fan, but to actually have a guy who's somebody who supports Atalanta from, I'm sure you've been. How long have you followed Atalanta?
Since birth. I was
Since
born into
birth.
the club, yep.
So you've seen them go from, let's say, a provincial side into like this powerhouse.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Been there through all the highs and the lows. I remember even being in Serie C when I was little, so yep.
Even Serie C, it's been a long way since then, man.
Yep.
Now we see, privately owned stadium, renovation.
Yep.
Team nice.
The kid grew up. What can I say?
The kid grew up. Atalanta has such an interesting identity, but also in the past 5 years, they have been probably the team that I would say every big club least wants to play. But anyway, we got a couple questions we're going to get through, some interview style. And the first one here that Dan I wanted to get to is just how is Atalanta season going? If you could just give us a little deep dive.
Yeah, I mean, the table kind of speaks for itself. Tied for first with Napoli and Milan. Second, if you're looking at goals difference. This is the greatest start we've ever had after 6 match days, believe it or not. I'm going to put an asterisk on that because other people have already put an asterisk on it. And yeah, we haven't had the hardest first 6 games. Milan was probably the most difficult one, and we drew that at home with them. We probably should be up top right now because our last 2 matches were against Monza and Cremonese, and we managed to only draw with Cremonese this past weekend. So we really should be alone up top like we were after 5 match days. But I cannot complain. I mean, come on. I mean, to have the season that we had, we knew we were going to have to retool, and to start this well, we have obviously the benefit, and I'm putting it in quotes, of not being in Europe this year, especially at this time of year. We're again facing Roma tomorrow, and Roma has just had a game on Thursday, albeit it was probably a little bit easier. Some guys got some rest because of that early red card. But I really can't complain, Wayne. I'm actually very surprised, and I think most Atalantini are very surprised at the results. When it comes to how we're playing, though, it's kind of up in the air. It's very different. It's hard to judge how well we're actually playing because it's completely different right now than what we're used to seeing from the last 5 years from Gasparini's squad. Interesting.
So, like Ladea has tied against Cremonese, as you mentioned. I also see also the game against Milan. They drew the team who is the reigning Serie A champs. So, was that down to good play, or was that just toughness or tactics?
I do want to say, though, the interesting thing about Atalanta right now is we have never gone behind. So we have yet to go behind this season after 6 match days. I think that, the Cremonese match was all about we actually made a mistake in defense. Because, in the past, really, it's not really 100% true per se that we had a super leaky defense. It's just that we didn't care as much, right? We were scoring 3-4 points a game. A couple of seasons ago, we scored 98 goals in Serie A. So we could score 4 and give up 2. It was no big deal. But we've only conceded 3 goals so far this season. So it's like, who dis? New Atalanta, like having the best defense in Serie A.
I didn't realize that one.
Yeah. It's a little crazy. So things are changing, Wayne. I mean, if you look at Atalanta over the past 5 to 6 years, you talk about a high pressing, up tempo, turning the screw against your opponents, dominating possession. We're just behind Roma when it comes to possession. We're in 15th place in possession. We're a counterattacking team all of a sudden. I don't know where this came from. So basically, our block is getting much lower. God bless Gasparini. He's got a plan B, and I didn't even know he had it in him, to be honest with you.
I had no idea. See, to me, I always thought of Gasparini as this system coach, especially since, when he went to Inter Milan, it was very underwhelming. And then he starts this new project at Atalanta. And I imagined, and I've looked into his tactics quite a bit, and this leads into the next question. that he was one-dimensional. And you bring up a really interesting fact in that they're giving up possession there, but that's not giving up; it's allowing the other team, and then hitting them very quickly. And one thing that I think either pressing or countering is that Atalanta's attack, like the way that they move through the final third, is like lightning quick. It's so 1-2, and just like a little dagger, like House of a Thousand Daggers. Atalanta will hit you from like so many different locations. But in the past year and a half, Atalanta has lost Papu Gomez, who was so vital. You're either vital or you're not, but vital to Atalanta's play. But also Ilicic, who I thought could have been at times of Gasparini's cycle, like the Serie A MVP. Mm-hmm. So who is he using in place of that? How do you come back from losing two of your best players?
That is such a great question. That's really the crux of what is essentially what's happened the last, we'll call it season and a little bit, right? Because we didn't have a great season last season. We finished in 8th, even though the first half of the season, it was the most points we'd ever had in our history, ever since we got 3 points per win in Serie A. And we're normally a second half of the season team. And so I thought, oh my gosh, we could be challenging for the Scudetto, and then it all fell apart. Papu Gomez and Josip Ilicic. I just have to say, Josip Ilicic, probably the greatest player I've ever seen in this jersey. Not in the sense that he was consistent by any means, but just the talent and he's just one of those players that could solve a game in 30 seconds. And Atalanta doesn't have him or Papu Gomez anymore. Part of the thing with Gasparini's system is, a lot of people compare the way that Atalanta played in the past 5-6 years much more to a Bundesliga type team. So it's like Die Mannschaft. It's like a machine that keeps going forward. But within that machine, you get predictable if you keep doing the same thing over and over again. Papu and Josip gave us a little bit of creativity, a little bit of spark, and that a little bit of unexpectedness. Oh, I'm not going to overlap to Hatibor. I'm actually going to cross the pass over to the other side to Gosens on the left-hand side. So without those guys, you saw what happened to the system and to the team last year. We got figured out. I have to say that was the problem. So Gasparini coming into this season, we lost Robin Gosens to Inter halfway through at the winter of January of this year, so last season. Matteo Pessina had a terrible season. He went to Monza. We inexplicably, maybe, sort of, sold Remo Freuler, who has been there. So, like, the foundations of our team stemming from that, that magical 2019-2020 season and even earlier is completely gone. So Gasparini is now turning, basically, the players who he's gotten aren't going to work in that system anymore. So I know that we can see what the possible starting lineup here is. And what you have here is potentially what it most definitely could be in that normal 3-4-2-1 that Roma pretty much plays as well. But we have seen 4 at the back twice to start a match this season, and we've never seen it more than once in the rest of in the other seasons. So what's really going to be key, of course, is having that defensive solidity with Merit Demiral being so amazing at center back this season. Juan Musso starting off the season well. He made a mistake against Cremonese. That's why we drew. But really, it's all about that midfield now, and it's about Teun Koopmeiners. If we play with 4 at the back, it gives us an extra midfielder. And what it does is it allows Teun Koopmeiners to kind of be like a tuttocampista. Much more mobile than, say, a Papu Gomez was going to be, and even more than Remo Freuler. Doesn't have the same kind of creativity per se as like a Papu or a Josip or unexpectedness, but has the range of passing, can drop deep, can run forward. So if you're talking about a star player right now, it has to be Teun Koopmeiners. One of those Atalanta steals that we got last season from AZ Alkmaar in the Eredivisie. So everything kind of should be going through him. And we have a couple of other wild cards. Of course, we got Ederson from Salernitana, fantastic Brazilian player. And we have Ademola Lookman, who came over from Leicester/RB Leipzig. So really, really interesting type of players who are more direct than we have ever been. because you talked about what happened in the last third, the quickness of the last third with Atalanta, that died last season. I think I coined a phrase, dipsy doodling around the box, because that's what we would end up doing. We would turn over the ball. We had that high press, and we wouldn't know what to do. We couldn't get that final ball done because we didn't have the right player. Papu's gone. Ilicic is gone. And so now we're changing the way that we're playing. We're becoming more direct. We're hitting on the counter. It's really, really odd, Wayne, but it seems to be working.
The one player I'm not so familiar with here is Soppy. What's his style?
So Brandon Soppy is really, really interesting because we have needed, but I want to say that maybe Gasperini wingbacks have been overhyped. I'm not saying the players themselves, but the how they have to be really, really good. Going from back in the day in 2016, 2017, Spinazzola and Conti, right? The young wingbacks and how important they were to scoring, coming with Hateboer, and then with, of course, Gosens, Timmy Castagna. So we have had a lack of, speed on basically on the wings. Now that especially Hans Hateboer got injured, he's not nearly as fast. Brandon Soppy is young, dynamic. We got him from Udinese. He's normally a right wing back or fullback, but he's been playing a lot on the left. He's an excellent dribbler, and he likes to go at guys. So he's a little bit different than what we've seen from Atalanta wingbacks in the past, but he's perfect for this new counter-attacking system that Gasperini has.
Interesting. So a little bit different, like that Hateboer, that bombing wingback. So this Atalanta is scary. As we're talking, I'm starting to feel different emotions that maybe I didn't at the beginning of this broadcast. I'm looking at Derun.
Yeah, they scare me too, Wayne. So I don't, maybe for different reasons.
Probably for different reasons, but Ederson was a gem that Walter Sabatini brought over to Salernitana. It came out of the blue, and all of a sudden it was like, who is this dynamic dynamo that Salernitana has? And then less than a year later, he's at Atalanta. And as we speak about this shift, and you bring up the players that have been involved in that, whether you go way back to Spinazzola and Conti, who went to Milan, and Kessie, and then you speed it up and you look to the past 2 years, the players you mentioned, you got to give you got to give a round of applause to Atalanta's management, their sporting director, for being able to cope with that and still maintaining their competitiveness for a team that cannot spend like AC Milan.
Yeah.
Cannot, they're not Man City. It's virtually a different ballgame for them.
Yeah, I mean, and you mentioned probably what I didn't mention is the biggest change we probably had within the management is because our director of sport, our sporting director, Giovanni Sartori, left. And he was the architect. He was at Bologna now. So we brought in Tony D'Amico from Hellas Verona, who had some great success over there. He's young. And I think the whole name of the game actually is youth, because the average age of Atalanta last season from the squad was around 27, 28. This season, it's around 23.
Average age of Atalanta?
The average age of the Atalanta matchday squad. So it's pretty crazy to see how that has happened. And having youth and having Gianpiero Gasperini, we've seen is actually a really good thing, because he complained a little bit at the end of the transfer market that he wasn't getting the players that he wanted. But if you remember his very first season, that 2016-2017 season, he only won 1 out of his first 5 games. They were 1-4. Napoli comes in. He said, screw it, I'm going to stick the kids in, and the rest is history. Because that's when Gagliardini came on. That's when Kessie came on. That's when Conti came on. So there's a lot of good things that are happening. I just don't know. Like, we haven't necessarily been tested in that way. And it's hard to judge how well we're playing when we're playing completely differently than I'm used to seeing, than any of us at the Atalantini are used to seeing. Like, is it bad that we keep going long? Like, what's going on? Like, why do we only have 46% possession? What's happening here? Why is our press so deep? It's really, really, really weird, Wayne. And because Gasperini is still there on the sideline gesticulating, as he always does. So it's kind of a weird thing, but it's kind of exciting, I have to say.
And you bring up average age, and as you were talking, I just looked up quickly. Ederson, 23 years old. Brendan Soppy, 20.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, the other thing is we actually have guys who, I mean, ordinarily Atalanta is the loan market for the rest of Italy, especially Serie B, Serie C. And obviously there's new loan regulations within UEFA, so we've had to, get rid of some of these loanees and actually sell them. We actually have 3 Primavera guys on the squad for the first time, and I don't know how long I can remember. In Calabocoli, Nadir Zortea, and of course Giorgio Scalvini, who could be the next
Scalvini. Yeah, he's an exciting one to watch. Wow. I think Roma is going to be in for quite the match, and I'm really interested to see where the ball is going to end up. 2 counter-attacking teams of high quality. Well, Mourinho's side, I got a new type of Gasperini. How does this match play out? And one thing that I had planned to ask you is who is the star player of this Atalanta? But to me, the vibe that I'm getting is like that it's a communal force. It seems to be a team that's really come together with an exceptional midfield here.
Yeah, I think you could say who are the key players. Of course, I think in defense it's going to be Mary Demiral and Rafael Toloi, ex-Romanista, is having himself a fantastic season.
Keeps getting better and better.
He keeps getting better. He's like a fine wine, and
not rapid though, like step by step, just just bulking up a little bit, getting a little bit more eye for watching his back line.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he is the captain of the squad, and I think that after Papu left, he was the perfect guy to step in there because Gasperini needs like a quiet, calm captain, not an outspoken captain, because Gasperini can't be having a player take the spotlight from him. Come on, this is Gianpiero Gasperini, so he's been perfect for that. And Demiral is just a warrior back there. That's probably one of our best signings of the summer, was actually keeping him, redeeming his loan from Juve.
I don't know what Juventus were thinking with that one. Jeez.
Poor Juve.
I saw him play once, and I was like, wait, why did they loan it to Atalanta? This guy makes tremendous plays. He reads the game. He makes great tackles. And I think for especially Atalanta, and now that they're switching the way they play, like having that type of leader next to Toloi, maybe someone who is a little bit more like boisterous in their play, juxtaposed against this cool and calm Toloi.
Yep.
It's a nice pairing.
Yeah, and the crazy thing with Rafa Toloi is that he's perfect for that, what we call the box to box center back that Gasperini likes to make those runs. But even when playing at 4 at the back, so you only have 2 central defenders, he's actually bombing into the box still. So it's hard to get that out of your DNA. And Rafa Toloi is in the perfect place in Atalanta for that under Gasperini with that system.
I've never heard. I am familiar with that center back, the way that they're deployed, but I've never heard those 2 words used together, box to box center back. But that's exactly what it is. Overlap, getting ahead of the center midfielder who drops a little deeper.
Yep.
Yeah. That's Gasperini's. I would say he's probably the innovator of that.
Yeah, I would definitely say so. I mean, one of the things too, that there's one of the reasons why that's actually happening quite a bit is that Martin de Roon, talking about youth, he's not getting any younger, and he was never fast. So especially with Koopmeiners being able to move a lot more, he tends to stay back. Wayne, watch the match, whether we play 3 or 4 at the back. One of the big Gasperini tactics is overloading on the wings. We don't play in triangles. We play in rhombuses or squares, right? We don't do that anymore. So that was what kind of freed up the gaps behind for teams to run in. That's how you beat us 4-1 last season. Those gaps shouldn't be happening anymore. So we're not scoring as many goals, but we're not conceding as much either. Martin de Roon's back there sometimes, so Rafa Toloi can kind of bomb into the box.
Very interesting. And one player that I am afraid of is Malinovsky, but one I don't know is actually Hoyland. And is he a proper Zapata replacement, or is this a big omission with Zapata not making it?
So, I mean, I'm not 100% sure Rasmus Hoyland is going to start this match. I would like him to. We still have Luis Muriel, who didn't have a great season. He hasn't had a great season this year either. He was a little hurt at the beginning of this season, and the same as last season, but he hasn't been great. Rasmus Hoyland, I'll be honest with you, this kid's 19 years old. He's from Denmark. He scored 6 goals in his first 8 games at Sturm Graz in Austria, and we hooked him in. I had no idea who this kid was until we were talking about him until we signed him.
Me neither.
But we spent a lot of money, 17 million on a 19-year-old. That's a lot of dough for Atalanta. So he got 19 years old. 19 years old. So if you want to compare, he's definitely not exactly a Duvan Zapata. So Duvan Zapata is more of a hold-up kind of focal point striker. Lethal if he gets the ball at his feet and he's got his back to you in the box. The problem with Duvan Zapata is he's not a clinical finisher. He's a big burly body and he's willing to work. That's why Gasperini loves him. Rasmus Hoyland is more an on-the-shoulder type of attacker. He's left-footed. He's a baby Vlahovic. He's got that strong running style, and he's going to run behind and make smart runs behind the center backs. He came in for Duvan when Duvan got injured. I believe that was against Torino. And then he started the next match against Hellas Verona, got a debut goal in his first start. And he has shown that he has, in 3 games, all of a sudden, in the last game against Cremonese, he was holding up the ball like Duvan Zapata. So he's got all the tools, and he got called up to the Danish national team.
Did he?
Yes, he did.
I saw he had some caps. So that's...
Yeah. So this is going to be the first time he gets called, I believe, to the senior squad at 19 years old. And
yeah, this is his first one.
Yeah, Joachim Mele, of course, who is our wing back, who is famous for being amazing for Denmark in tournaments, but not so great for Atalanta. It's nice to have Joachim Mele because he can you always see them talking to each other, obviously probably in Danish. This is first time in Italy. I'm really excited about Rasmus Hoyland because I think that he is the type of striker that Atalanta needs within this system. Somebody who's clinical. Duvan is not clinical. Lucho, I'm not sure what you're going to get from day to day, right? So it's really, really exciting. He's 19 years old. I don't know how long we're going to hang on to this kid. Let me tell you what. And I think this one is one of those ones that if he has a halfway decent season, maybe goes to the World Cup with Denmark, gets some playing time, 45 million to the Premier League next season if he does well.
Yeah, Hoyland.
Yep.
One to keep an eye on.
Yeah, we'd like to call him Babes in Hoyland. That's what we call him.
Babes in Hoyland. Babes, I'm putting that as a... There we go. HOJLUND. Right? Yes. And we're making that a banner. Right? Babes in Hoyland. That's great. Now I'm looking at Roma's lineup here, and we've got a couple of new players that have worked into the lineup. His name is Paulo Dybala. I'm not sure if, other Serie A fans have heard of him before. Pellegrini is dropping back into a center mid role, most likely. The defense has remained relatively the same from last year, aside from the re-entry of Leonardo Spinazzola. Unfortunately, Rick Karsdorp has torn his meniscus, and Selik, coming over from Turkey, he seems to be a really good player. Abraham had a boatload of goals last year, and there is the re-entry of Zaniolo after his injury. And how are Atalanta fans feeling? Who is, do you think, the most threatening player given the tactical battle that we'll see tomorrow?
Yeah, I think that front three is something that is scary for anybody. Of course, Atalanta fans too. When you have Dybala, Zaniolo, and Abraham, it is good to have Zaniolo back, that he wasn't injured for a line. It was just his shoulder, so that's good, even though I'm not a Roma fan by any means. I would love to not have to face Zaniolo. And Tammy Abraham is Tammy Abraham. I really, there was a potential that we could try to sign him last season before Roma. We couldn't afford him. But I really like Tammy Abraham. He's that type of long, leggy, workhorse striker that's really necessary, I think, in today's modern game. But the X factor, it has to be Paulo Dybala, and all of a sudden he's just come on, having a great season with Roma. And so with Atalanta playing a lot deeper, I think that Zaniolo and Abraham are going to have a lot less space than they're used to when they play against us to run behind. So it's going to really be about the wizardry of Paulo Dybala and the space that he's going to find. Watch out for that matchup between Abraham and Mary Demirel. That should be a fun one. As well as potentially Hans Hateboer against his old teammate from across the way, Leonardo Spinazzola. It's always good to see that. And of course, a heavenly host of ex-Atalantini on Roma. So it's always good to play against them.
Yes. It's like one way or another. It seems that some of these Atalanta talents do make their way over. Brian Cristante. That one, I would say you probably, right now, I think Atalanta should feel comfortable with having let him go. I think he really benefited, like talking back in the day, from Gomez. And now he's gone into this like shuffle at Roma where I think he's expected to be a defensive midfielder, yet at Atalanta, his best years were as an attacking mid. So it's that's been a tough one for him. I wonder how he feels about that career transition. And a lot of times the Roma fans get on him quite a bit, whether deserve it or undeserved is another story. But so we'd be looking at that battle, Abraham versus Demiral, and you bring up the wizardry that will come into this game. I could see it as well. It's going to be down to quick movements, getting players, beating them one-on-one, because it is going to be pretty cagey, I think, in each the back end of each defensive third. Oh, how are you calling this one? If you had to give a scoreline, what do you think?
Before that match against Helsinki, and because of the early red card, and I felt like it was, an easier match. I actually felt like we could win this one like 2-1. I actually feel like this is the first game that we're ever going to go down in this season. Like we're going to go down 1-0, but I think we're going to come back. But with the fact that Roma did not have to travel, at least that was a home game, right, in the Europa League, I believe, and the fact that it was a relatively easy 3-0-er, so that I know that Abraham and Dybala and Zaniolo, they didn't play full matches.
No.
There. Zaniolo started, but I think Abraham and if I'm not mistaken, Dybala came in off the bench. I can't remember, but the key players didn't all have play 90 minutes. So, everything says right now that this is a low-scoring draw, but this is Atalanta against Roma. We've had some classics over the years. So, while on my podcast I had said it was going to be 2-1, I'm not so sure now after seeing that match. Let's go for a high-scoring draw. Let's go for 3-3. Let's have some excitement.
Wow, 3-3. There we go, Dan's score. Oh, that's quite the move there, 3-3. It's funny, I'm going 2-1 Roma. I have to pick my boys. But I like you, though, I don't give it a 0-0 or a 0-1. I don't see it. I just think there's too much quality on the pitch.
Yeah.
In the attacking front.
Somebody's going to make a mistake. I think that's going to be the first mistake is probably going to come with us. I think that's going to happen on the first goal. We love to make mistakes against Roma, but I think we're going to finally test our mettle. I think we're going to come back into this one. It'll be really, really interesting.
Yeah, interesting. That's how I'm feeling this one is.
Yeah,
I'm heading out to Roma Club New York. Are you going to be watching this one from home?
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
I'll be sitting there cheering my boys on from my couch together with my dog.
Yeah. Oh, is there any famous match or one that's memorable for you against Roma, or any goal? I think of this is why I love playing Atalanta, when Roma went to Bergamo and it was snowing. It was a snowstorm. Pjanic hit a free kick. That's my favorite memory of, I would say, like, it's up there in my Roma, match log. Yeah. But against Roma, are there any memorable goals or matches?
Well, I think it was the 2017-2018 season where in Bergamo, Roma went up 3-0 and Atalanta came back and it was 3-3. And then the reverse fixture in Rome, we went up 3-0 and Roma came back to tie it 3-3. So I'm going with 3-3 because of that. I'll never forget that. But there was a goal that I believe it was in the 2021 season that Josip Ilicic scored, and they were wearing their god-awful gray third jersey.
Yes.
That he just came on and to ice the match. I think we were up 2-1, and I think he put away the third, and he just did this little shimmy that he does, and he just put it past who was in goal back then for
in 2017.
No, in 2021.
21. It would have been Rui Patricio.
The one before that, so 2019, 2020, I think.
Oh my gosh, was it Olsen?
Might have been
Olsen.
Yeah, might have been. But Yeah, you finally got yourselves a good goalkeeper. It was a while before.
I'm looking at these. Yeah, geez, tell me about that. I'm looking at these headlines from then, and it's like amazing Roma comeback, and then the next one is Roma blows 3-goal lead. 2 words: Roma happened. Chiesto di tolti.
Yeah, that was an amazing thing, and I think that that was part of a very exciting Atalanta squad that was completely headless at times. They would score a bunch, and then they would get that's why the neutrals actually really like to watch them, because you never knew what you're going to get.
So true.
For us, it was what we used to call our heart attack defense. So it's a little easier. I'm getting a little older, Wayne. I got that high blood pressure. Having a more calm backline is doing good for me in my old age, let me tell you.
But the other day, I went to go see my old team that I coached, the high school team, and I'm no longer the coach, and I was sitting in the stands. I couldn't even watch it. I was like, my heart's pumping, and I'm like, no, going crazy, and I'm like, yo, you got to relax, like talking to myself.
Yeah, these smartwatches, I always get that your heart rate is elevated and you haven't moved, like warning, like I'm gonna get a heart attack or something like that.
That's funny.
Yeah, but
Dan,
that hasn't happened this season yet. Hasn't happened.
Well, hopefully not tomorrow. We'll see. Or maybe I should be hoping for your high blood pressure tomorrow. So Dan, thanks for coming on. You're a brilliant guest, honestly.
Thank you.
Can you plug your podcast for us?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a real easy to remember. It's the Atalanta Pod. It's on all the normal pod platforms. Myself and my partner Nick, who is on the East Coast in North Carolina. He is also you can follow him at Atalanta Passion on Twitter. And he also has a great website called atalantapassione.com, where you can read all about tactics and all this stuff. He's totally the nerd out of the two of us. I'm more like the color commentary. So we're like this yin and yang. But we're unashamedly an Atalanta podcast. We try to be as open as we can be, but this podcast is about Atalanta. So we get into it. We talk about tactics. We talk about all sorts of things. So we love to do that. It's one of our favorite things to do every week. I've met him once, and we've been doing this podcast together for a couple of years. So it's like
that's cool.
He's like one of my best friends, and we bond over Atalanta. So
that's funny. I have a buddy like that. I've never even met him in real life. His name's Patrick. He lives in Peru. I used to do a podcast with him like a decade ago, and him and I just every now and then we'll chat. It's funny.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I'll be definitely checking that out the next time I need some scouting tips on Atalanta. Sure. But thank you again, and maybe we'll see you sometime, hopefully, if you're around, definitely, for when Roma makes their way to Bergamo.
100%. And, Wayne, if we could love to have you on our podcast as well, so I'll probably be reaching out to you.
Excellent. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.